Hello children, today we will discuss about the pathway of air. What is the pathway of air from nostril to alveolus? Let us study. If you observe the nose, in the nose, two holes you are looking. So these holes are called nostrils. So this is the nose. So this is the opening of the nose, openings of the nose. So these are called as nostrils. Air enters into the body through the nostrils. Nostrils are the starting point of our respiratory system. Air enters into our body through the nostrils only. Next, nostrils opens into a empty place inside the nose. So this is the empty place in which nostrils open. So this empty place is called as a nasal cavity. Nasal cavity. This nostrils opens into an empty place. That empty place is called as a nasal cavity. What is nasal cavity? The empty place which is present inside the nose is called as a nasal cavity. What is the specialty of nasal cavity? What type of structures are there inside the nasal cavity? See here. In the nasal cavity, the inner surface of the nasal cavity is moist. See here, the inner surface of the nasal cavity is moist. How? If you keep your fingers inside your nose, then after that remove, then you will get the sticky substance. That sticky substance is called as a mucus. This mucus keeps the inner surface of the nasal cavity as moist. So nasal cavity is moist due to the presence of mucus substance. Next, from the inner surface of the nasal cavity, hairs are growing. What are growing? Hairs are growing from inner surface of the nasal cavity. What is the use of this moist and hairs which are present in the nasal cavity? Air is a mixture of gases. In the air, so many gases are there, and along with that, dust particles also there. Tiny particles of dirt also we can see in the air. So that air only we are taking into our body. So if that dust particles are entering into our body, so that may cause breathing problems to us. So dust particles should be removed from the air. So when we take the air through the nostrils into our body, when it is entering into the nasal cavity, when the air enters into the nasal cavity, that dust particles are removed from the air. So by the hairs which are present in the nose, and also due to the moist surface of the nasal cavity, due to the moist surface of the nasal cavity and hairs which are present in the nasal cavity, they will remove the dust particles, tiny particles of dirt from the air. Next, as the air passes through the nasal cavity, its temperature brought close to our body temperature. That means warming process. The process of warming is taking place inside the nasal cavity. As the air passes through the nasal cavity, again one more thing is happening. That air take up the water vapor so that it become more moist than before. That means moistening and warming processes are occurring in the nasal cavity. See, once again, see here. What is nasal cavity? An empty place present inside the nose, that is called nasal cavity. The inner surface of the nasal cavity is moist, and from the inner sides of the nasal cavity, hairs are growing. So the air which enters into the nasal cavity, from that air, in that air, many dust particles are there. So due to the moist surface of the nasal cavity and hairs, so they will remove the dust particles from the air. As the air passes through the nasal cavity, so that air temperature brought close to the body temperature, and it will take up the water vapor and it become more moist than before. So these are the things happening in the nasal cavity. Next, nasal cavity opens into the next place. See here. By this way we take the air into our body. So air enters into the nasal cavity through the nostrils. So this is the way. So through the mouth we will take the what? Food. We will take the food through the mouth. Then after that food enters into the buccal cavity. So after the buccal cavity, so food will reach to the this same place. See here. This is the place where the air, when we take the air enters into the nasal cavity. After the nasal cavity, air will reach to the this place. So this place is called as, what do you call it, is pharynx. It is called as pharynx. See here, nasal cavity opens into the next part of the respiratory system, that is pharynx. Pharynx. Nasal cavity opens into the pharynx. What is pharynx? When we take the air enters into the nasal cavity through the nostrils. After the nasal cavity, air goes to the pharynx. See here, when we take the food, we take the food through the mouth. Then after that, it enters into the buccal cavity. After buccal cavity, food enters into the pharynx. That means air is entering into the pharynx and food also enters into the pharynx. That means pharynx is a common place for air and food. Pharynx is the common passage for air and food. Pharynx is the common passage for respiratory system and digestive system. Here, when we take the air into our body, that air finally has to reach to the lungs. That air should go into the lungs. And when we take the food, that should go to the stomach. So it should be happen. Sometimes what happen, there may be chances this may be happen. When we take the food, that food maybe enters into the lungs. So who will control this passage of food and air? So here at the place of the pharynx, one muscular flap-like valve is present. So it is called what we call epiglottis. At the place of the pharynx, epiglottis, special structure is present. At the place of the pharynx, epiglottis is present. What is epiglottis? A flap-like muscular valve is present at the place of the, or in the place of the pharynx, that is called epiglottis. What is the function of epiglottis? Epiglottis control the way of food into the stomach, and epiglottis control the way of air into the lungs. So due to the presence of epiglottis only, air is entering into the lungs and food is going into the stomach. Otherwise that won't be happen. So that is happening in proper way. So because of the presence of epiglottis structure. So this epiglottis is present at the region of the pharynx. So this is about the pharynx. In the pharynx, warming and moistening also going on. Warming and moistening processes goes on in the pharynx also. Pharynx is a common place for food and air, common place for respiratory system and digestive system. At the place of the pharynx, epiglottis, a special structure is present. It is a flap-like muscular valve. So due to the presence of epiglottis, food is entering into the stomach and air is going into the lungs. Next, pharynx opens into the next part of the respiratory system. So that is larynx. Larynx. Larynx, commonly called as voice box. Commonly called as voice box. See the diagram. So this is the pharynx. Pharynx opens into a box-like structure. Pharynx opens into a box-like structure. So this box-like structure is called as larynx. Larynx. Larynx means what? Voice box. Pharynx opens into a box-like structure. That box-like structure is called as larynx or voice box. What is there inside the larynx? In the larynx, two vocal cords. Two vocal cords are present in the larynx. When we breathe out, when the air is coming out from the lungs, it passes over the vocal cords. It touches the vocal cords. When the air touching to the vocal cords, then vocal cords vibrates. This vibration of the vocal cords bring the sound. If any object is vibrating, then what happens? Sound will be produced. When the vocal cords also vibrating, then what happens? Sound will be produced. Say this is the larynx. So larynx means voice box, commonly called as voice box, and inside the larynx two vocal cords are present. When we breathe out, the air is coming out from the lungs and it is passes over the vocal cords. Then vocal cords vibrates. So this vibration of the vocal cords produce the sound. So in that way we will speak and we will talk. Next, larynx opens into the next part of the respiratory system, that is trachea. Trachea. What is trachea? See here, so this box-like structure is called as larynx. So larynx opens into a tube-like structure. This tube-like structure is called as trachea. What is trachea? Trachea is commonly known as windpipe. Windpipe is called as trachea. Trachea is the scientific name and windpipe is the common name. So this windpipe, this tube-like structure is called as trachea. See here, you can feel the presence of trachea. How? Just touch your throat with the hand, then you will know that a tube-like structure is present in the neck part. So this tube-like structure is called as trachea. So trachea is also called as windpipe. So when the air is coming out from the lungs, then what happens? That air contains some pressure. Due to that pressure, the structure of trachea may be damaged, may be collapsed. So to prevent that, this trachea is made up of C-shaped cartilages. So it is made up of cartilage tissue. So these are the cartilages, they are present in C shape. So they will prevent the damage of trachea from the air pressure. So this is the trachea. A tube-like structure is present. So below the larynx, a tube-like structure is present, that is called trachea or windpipe. So this trachea channeling the air into the lungs. See here, this is the trachea, this is the upper end of the trachea and this is the lower end of the trachea. Next, lower end of the trachea divides into the two branches. Lower end of the trachea divides into the two branches. So these two branches are called as bronchi. What do you call? Bronchi. And each branch is called as bronchus. Each branch is called as bronchus. See, trachea opens into a branch. That branch is called bronchus. See here, lower end of the trachea divides into the two branches. These two branches together called as bronchi. See, bronchus is the singular. When one branch you are telling bronchus. So two branches together called as bronchi. So bronchus is the singular and bronchi is the plural. So trachea end part, lower end of the trachea divides into the two branches. These two branches are called as bronchi. Next, each bronchus enters into the lungs. See, opens into the lung. This is the lung. Next, this bronchus also opens into the another lung. So two bronchus, this bronchus opens into the one lung and this bronchus opens into the another lung. So we have two lungs. So here trachea opens into the bronchus. Next, each bronchus divides into the smaller and smaller branches. Each bronchus divides into the small and small branches. So this bronchus also divides into the many small branches. So these small branches are called as bronchioles. Bronchioles. That means bronchus opens into the bronchioles. Bronchus opens into the bronchioles. Bronchioles. What are bronchioles? The small branches which are produced from the bronchus are called as bronchioles. Next, at the end of the bronchioles, a sac-like structure is present. At the end of each bronchiole, sac-like structures are present. So sac-like structures are present. Air sacs. So these sac-like structures are called as what you call alveolus. Alveolus is the singular, alveoli is the plural. So bronchioles opens into a sac-like structure. That sac-like structure is called alveolus. Alveolus is the singular, alveoli is the plural. See here, every bronchiole opens into the sac-like structure, that is called alveolus. Next, in the alveolus, what happened? So alveolus are the sac-like structures in which gaseous exchanging taking place. Gaseous exchanging means oxygen and carbon dioxide, they will be exchanged in the alveolus part. See here, this is the alveolus. I will draw the diagram here. This is the alveolus. This is the sac-like structure. So this is the bronchiole, and this is the alveoli or alveolus. And near to the alveoli, surrounding to the alveoli, a small blood vessel is present. This is called what you call blood capillary. So this is called as blood capillary. This is the blood capillary, and this is the alveolus, and this is the bronchiole, alveolus, blood capillary. Inside the blood capillary, what is present? Blood is present. What is present? Blood is present. So our body is made up of many cells. So each cell take up the oxygen, produce the carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide carried to the lungs. So now here inside the blood capillary, what is present? Carbon dioxide is present. Now inside the alveoli, what is present here? Oxygen gas reached to the alveoli. How oxygen reached? So when we take the air into our body, in that air 21% of oxygen is there. So that air goes to the nasal cavity through the nostrils, then after that reach to the pharynx, then larynx, then trachea, then bronchus, then bronchioles, then alveolus. So now oxygen is there in the alveolus. Now carbon dioxide is present in the blood. So now this blood capillary, inside the blood capillary carbon dioxide is there. Now blood capillary take the oxygen and it will release the carbon dioxide into the alveolus. Blood capillary take up the oxygen and it expel the carbon dioxide into the alveolus. Oxygen is present in the alveolus. From the alveolus to oxygen is going and entering into the blood. See here, from alveolus to blood. Oxygen finally reaches to the alveoli. Then after that oxygen enters into the blood. So in the blood what happened? Already carbon dioxide is there. So that carbon dioxide again enters into the alveolus. From the alveolus it will be goes to the bronchioles. From the bronchioles carbon dioxide enters into the bronchus. From the bronchus trachea, then trachea to larynx, larynx to pharynx, then pharynx to nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity through the nostrils, that carbon dioxide, the air which contains the more amount of the carbon dioxide is releasing outside. So this is the pathway of air. See here, we are taking the air into our body through the holes which are present to the nose. So that holes are called nostrils. Then air goes to the where an empty place which is present inside our nose, that is called nasal cavity. Air enters into the body through the nostrils. The nostrils opens into the nasal cavity. In the nasal cavity, what is happening? Warming and moistening of air is happening inside the nasal cavity. Nasal cavity inner surface is moist and hairs are growing from its inner surface. Due to that, so that structures remove the dust particles from the air. Next, nasal cavity opens into the common place of digestive system and respiratory system. That passage is called pharynx. At the place of the pharynx, one special muscular valve is present, that is called epiglottis. Due to the presence of epiglottis, air enters into the lungs and food enters into the stomach. Epiglottis controlling the passage of food and air into their respective passages. Next, pharynx opens into the box-like structure, that is called larynx. What is larynx? A box-like structure is present below the pharynx, that is called larynx. Larynx is commonly known as voice box. Two vocal cords are present in the larynx. So when the air coming from the lungs touching to the vocal cords which are present in the larynx, they will vibrate. So this vibration produces the sound. Next, larynx opens into a tube-like structure, that is called Trachea. Trachea is a tube-like structure. We can feel if you keep the hand on your neck, then you will get the tube-like structure that is called trachea or windpipe. Next, trachea opens into the two branches. So the end part of the trachea divides into the two branches. So these branches are called, each branch is called bronchus. Two branches together called as bronchi. So bronchi is the plural. Bronchi is the plural, bronchus is the singular. Next, after that, bronchus opens into the smaller and smaller branches. Bronchus divides into the small and small branches. These branches are called bronchioles. Next, at the end of each bronchiole, a sac-like structure is present. So that sac-like structure is called alveolus. Alveolus. Alveolus is the singular. Alveoli is the plural. Next, alveolus is surrounded by a blood capillary. Inside the blood capillary, blood is present. So now oxygen is moving from alveoli to the blood. So then what happens? Whatever the carbon dioxide is there in the blood, that will be enters into the alveoli. So that air which contain the more carbon dioxide next moves to the bronchioles, from the bronchioles to the bronchus, then it goes to the trachea, then it goes to the larynx, then pharynx, then nasal cavity, then nostrils. By the nostril, that air which contain the more carbon dioxide is going outside or releasing outside. This is the pathway. See, we take the air through the nostrils. After that, it enters into the nasal cavity. Then after that, air enters into the common place. This is the pharynx. Next, after that, air goes to the voice box or larynx. Next, air goes to the tube-like structure. It is called trachea. Then trachea divides into the two branches. These are called bronchi. Each branch is called bronchus. Next, bronchus. Every bronchus enters into the one lung, and this bronchus enters into the another lung. We have two lungs. Then each bronchus divides into the smaller and smaller branches. These are called bronchioles. Each bronchiole terminate with the sac-like structures. These are called alveolus. Plural is alveoli. Next, after that, so this is the alveoli. So in every lung, many alveoli are present. So in two lungs, there are many number of alveoli are present. So these alveoli increase the surface area for the gaseous exchange. So if we open the all alveoli which are present in the two lungs, if we spread the alveoli which are present in the two lungs, then that all alveoli occupy how much space? So that occupy the 160 meter square area. So that is equal to one tennis court. That is equal to one tennis court. That much area is occupied by the alveoli. So that many number of alveoli are present inside the lungs. So this is the pathway of air, and that is the diagram for the pathway of air.